Hi, Alberto. Welcome to the Fireside chat of the Data Literacy Geeks area. We are very, very honored to have you on board. Recently, I have seen one of your Harvard discussions, a session where you showed all kinds of stuff. So amazing. And it was so cool that I asked you to join us in a conversation here. And to kick it off, how can how would you help or how would you advise people to start working with insights created from data? So how is the path? It's a journey. I see it as a journey. It starts simple and grows to more difficult visualizations. So could you elaborate on that, please?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. The answer to that question will take like 2 or 3 books because I don't see. I may write them at some point. Who knows?
I have some here.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. But I don't see data literacy as something that we can clearly separate from clear thinking or from clear reasoning. I see data literacy as one of the tools and numbers and the visual display of those numbers, charts, as one of the main tools that we can use to make sense of the world. But we can make sense of the world through other complementary means, such as logic, philosophy, science, and so on and so forth. I see data, I see numbers as and the visual display of those numbers as supporting those tasks. So it is hard for me to answer that question precisely because of that, because where do you begin? Well, you begin, I think, by providing not necessarily training in data thinking or data literacy, but providing essentially a training on the liberal arts. So beginning with philosophy, beginning with epistemology, beginning with moral philosophy, at a very basic level, but at least forcing people, and when I say people, I have students in mind, but it could be anybody, right? A very solid foundation on critical thinking, if you want to put it that way, right? Critical reasoning. However, and this is also part of the problem, and I discussed this a little bit in my latest book, How Chats Lie. When we learn about critical thinking, and data literacy can be part of that, it becomes extremely easy to detect problems in other people. And what I say in the book is that the first person that you need to put in check is yourself. Whenever you're training yourself in data literacy, critical thinking, you need to look inwards other than outwards in order to detect your own biases, which is something that really obsesses me. I think that one of the challenges that we face in teaching people how to be more critical about the information that we receive every day is that we don't pay attention, and we don't pay attention to what we see out there, but more importantly, we don't pay attention to what happens over here. And we all tend to believe wrongly that we are extremely rational beings. So it is extremely useful and extremely, I think, important to teach people how to look inside, how to become more self-reflective, how to identify our own biases so we can curb them a little bit. It is impossible to kill them, it's impossible to avoid them, but we can curb them. We can put it under control. And I see data literacy as part of that, because obviously numbers, if they are well generated, if they are well created, if the metrics are well defined, and things are correctly measured, measurements can be extremely useful to support that type of reasoning in certain circumstances. And as an extension of that, charts, which is what I tend to focus on, the small niche that I tend to focus on my work, which is the visual display of those numbers. I'm sorry that I didn't answer your question, because so it's like, I see this as a sort of like a very broad educational program, and which doesn't necessarily need to be just focused on data literacy. That's just a small part. If you don't have the foundation before getting into the data, you will get it wrong. I think that you need to have the foundation before you get into the data part.
I find what you're saying really interesting, because you're saying that you need to reevaluate your own stance and bring yourself into a mindset of objectivity, so that you can.
I'm going to interrupt you in there. Not necessarily objectivity, but self-reflection and self-awareness.
To develop an understanding of your own subjectivity, then.
The sort of like observing yourself calmly. One of the things that I began doing years ago was to start practicing a little bit of meditation, not to relax, but to observe my own mind coming up with opinions. The traditional model of the rational human being is that, and it's completely wrong, but the traditional model is that we human beings begin with a blank slate. We gather data, we gather information, we process that information, and based on the results of that processing, we extract insights. And based on those insights, we generate opinions about the world, opinion about politics, opinion about policies. That's completely wrong. That's not how the mind works. It's the other way around. We first of all come up with opinions instantly and immediately, and then we seek information to support those opinions. We call that the confirmation bias, which is something that I warn against in How Chats Lie. That is like, we need to force ourselves not to do that. That's what I mean by trying to curb that impulse, because it can be put in check. It cannot be completely avoided, but it can be put in check if you learn how to do it, if you learn to observe yourself coming up with an opinion. And one of the exercises that I actually propose in the book, which I borrowed from a cognitive psychologist called Tom Stafford, is when you have a very strong opinion about something, try to explain that opinion rationally to someone who disagrees with you. And you will notice how very little support you have for your own opinions, how weak the foundations of your own opinions are. When you try to conduct that exercise, you realize how weak we are, right? And then is when you start sort of like doubting yourself a little bit. And then is when you can start teaching data literacy, because obviously data can help you with that, right? Can help you become more confident about your own opinion, your own views, etc. You can use data as an instrument for better understanding. The problem with the term data literacy, I think, is that it confuses, and again, I'm not saying that you don't need to use it, you should keep using it, but always making clear that data literacy is not an ultimate goal, right? In philosophy, there's the difference between ultimate goals and instrumental goals, right? An ultimate goal is something that has value on its own, on itself. An instrumental goal or instrumental value is a value that may lead you towards and will push you towards an ultimate goal. The ultimate goal of data literacy is not data literacy. The ultimate goal of data literacy is better understanding. Right? And data literacy is just one of the many instrumental steps that we can take towards that goal. I extended my answer a little bit, but these are all the ideas that I'm developing at the moment. Mm-hmm.
Actually, then probably the better definition of data literacy is not the one that we use a lot, like argue and work with and analyze, but it actually data literacy is understanding insights and data maybe better, a little bit better. That's
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And it should be taught, because it is very badly taught. Yeah. I mean, I didn't learn it in school. I taught myself little by little as an amateur throughout the years, but I didn't learn it in school. I wish that I could have had a class on, for example, statistics taught from this perspective. Unfortunately, statistics as is usually taught at the college level. I don't know what the situation is in Holland, in the Netherlands, but in the United States and in Spain, statistics at the college level is usually taught from the perspective of mathematics, from the perspective of pure mathematics, the calculations, etc., but they don't really teach you sort of like the conceptual understanding of what all those tests mean. What is the reason why we have those tests and what we use them for? And what is their applicability to your own life, right? To your own reality. That creates a level of abstract separation between you and something that can really help you in your life to understand those numbers a little bit better, right?
But even that is happening as well if you work not only with statistics, of course, but also I think with this, if you do not explain good enough how a visualization works and how you can what you can lead of it. A very good example was in your book with a scatter plot that you explained it, and then you said to ensure, okay, if you don't get it now, I will explain it later. But you know, how to read a scatter plot, for example, could be very difficult for people.
It is. It absolutely is. It's a complex chart, right?
Yeah, and and that's what I always try to do. To help. It's better to start simple with a bar chart, a line chart, or I saw those two balls with the line in between, which you draw with the Harvard session.
Lollipop charts. We used to
Lollipop
call
charts.
it.
It's so simple, but so to the point. And when people get a better understanding, and if they go on that journey, and they will actually, and they need some training, of course, to work with more advanced visualizations, I think the journey will be successful. But
Truly, yeah,
you have
absolutely.
to
You
be
begin,
taught. Yeah.
you begin with the basics. You teach the basics, and you build upon the basics. And what you're describing is part of a data literacy program, teaching people how to interpret charts correctly, how to read a chart grammatically, right? The grammar of the graphic, understanding how our graphic is built and being able to read it, but also being able to extract the meaning from the chart. And as I say in How Charts Lie, also avoiding the tendency that we all have to read too much into a chart and to project what we want to believe onto charts that we see, right? Which is also another bias that we can learn how to curb.
It's really hard to break out of these biases, especially today when social media is hammering you always back into your bubble.
And it's all scroll, and not paying attention to anything, right? Exactly, that's another thing. It's like I wish that when we train people, when we educate people on media literacy, critical literacy, we didn't forget that the first step in that education is teaching people how to pay attention to things, which sounds like a no-brainer. It sounds stupid, but it is absolutely not stupid. Attention needs to be trained. Attention is like a muscle that you need to train, because it's very easy to just scatter your attention everywhere, particularly nowadays when we have so many distractions everywhere, right? So teaching people how to train their own attention. Right? Mindfulness, meditation can also help a little bit with that.
Focus is a very rare commodity these days. The idea I kind of like. So attention and the ability to go like onto that meta layer, right, and looking at yourself within the context of many things is kind of like also the importance of like putting data visualizations and the learnings and insights that you're trying to derive from them into context as well, right? So this is the kind of like putting I think this is also something that is quite important. Looking at yourself, how you form your opinions is something that I've just learned, because I don't think I've actually ever done this consciously. I might have, because I'm quite critical of myself and try to learn a lot of things about myself. But I think this is something I'll look at. But I think like putting yourself in the framework of what's going on outside and trying to find this out. And then also with all the influences that you're getting. I mean, I think like, I don't want to start on that topic, but you know, like politically, I think we're all quite aligned. And what I found, like especially in these days, it's quite, bless you, it's quite difficult, quite difficult to get like an opposite opinion, right? So when you're so deep in that like media bubble with all of the influences pointing you in the same direction, and then impulses coming and just reinforcing what you already know, and trying to see this world through the other opinion's eyes, getting into this position is really difficult if you cannot go outside, as we cannot currently, and talk to someone.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. Sorry. Well, yeah, as you said, I mean, one of the critical things to doing that is to talk to other people. Is to essentially connect to other people you might disagree with, and try to get where they come from. Sorry, I have a sore throat today.
All right.
So yeah, absolutely, and it's very easy to keep living in our own bubbles. It happens to me, it happens to you, it happens to everybody. But it's, again, that's another impulse that we can another bias that we can try to curb. It's impossible to avoid it. We are all human beings, not machines. But we can try to curb them, trying to force ourselves to read things that we disagree with. For instance, right? I do that regularly, trying to force myself to read publications I know that I'm going to disagree with, and assume that they are written in good faith, not to deceive me. Obviously, this would require creating a media literacy diet that is balanced. So obviously, I don't read extreme right publications from the United States. That's garbage, and it should be avoided. I don't watch Fox News, for instance. That's garbage. Particularly, I would say Fox News in the United States. When we see it from the outside, it seems that all Fox News is Tucker Carlson and all those people, but that isn't true. Fox News has a very varied many of programs. Their news programs are actually not that bad. They have obviously a right wing perspective, but it's quite moderate. The problem is the commentators. The problem is the people who are in the evening. Those are the ones that must be avoided. And I actually have very strong opinions about this. I think that people like the commentators in Fox News, or extreme right wing media such as Breitbart and all these publications on the right, they are a public health threat. I think that we need to start studying those sources of misinformation as public health threats, because they truly are public health threats. So I avoid that, but I tend to read publications on the left and on the right, on both sides, which are moderate, in a certain moderate range of the political spectrum.
Yeah.
Would you say that this is one of the aspects where like data literacy and data visualization, interpretation, teaching can really make a difference? Because like the addressees of the audiences of this media are normally not like the 2,000 word kind of audiences, right? So they normally get like slapped with a picture with something that looks valid, but might not represent the information as it is. So
yeah, it oversimplifies the information, etc. And here we strike one of the critical challenges that we usually say we need to meet the audience where they are, but at the same time we need to inform the audience. Those two goals are nowadays opposite to each other. Because if you try to meet the audience where they are, particularly in extreme circumstances such as social media where people don't pay attention, the products that you will start publishing will be oversimplified representations of the information. And there are certain stories that can only be simplified up to a certain level. There are certain stories that are so complex that you cannot tell those stories just with a couple of numbers or with a simple chart. You will need several charts in order to tell the story. But there, you are not meeting the audience, because the audience, in theory, doesn't have enough attention span to absorb that message. So how do we overcome that? Do we overcome that problem? Honestly, I have no idea. But it's a challenge that we face nowadays.
Okay. Interesting. So I have to do some mindfulness.
You can call it whatever you want. Some people call it mindfulness, meditation. I just call it attention. It's just a matter of like turning off all sources of distraction, sitting still for 15, 20 minutes in a row, trying to focus your mind in nothing else other than, for example, what some meditation teachers use is your own breath, right? How you breathe, the rhythm of your own breath, and try to avoid any other thoughts, right? Just training your attention to that helps you train your attention to other things as well, right? It sounds like a little bit of woo or magic or whatever, but it's actually not magic. I mean, it's like, we know, I mean, many philosophers from many cultures, Oriental, Western, etc., have talked about this, the importance of attention and the importance of paying attention to what happens inside of our skulls, not only to what happens outside.
No. And it's true. I think we are all biased by a lot of things. So that's why I try to be secure and safe in my, first of all, as a teacher in my teaching, and second, as a consultant, give the good advice about some data visualizations, because I truly believe that good visualizations can help.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
To take people on that journey and let them grow and let them teach how to work, let them work with the data and the insights created from data, from simple and then finally to the more advanced visualizations. But sometimes not even when you discuss a histogram, people don't understand how to read a histogram.
Yeah, but you can teach, and people can learn. Same thing with the scatter plot. It just requires teaching. A little bit more attention, more teaching, but also more attention than a bar chart or than a simple line chart, right? But it can be taught. It absolutely can be taught. And what you're saying, I completely agree with. I mean, actually, when I wrote How Chats Lie, originally, when the book was announced, some people in the visualization community said, "Oh, but the title is so negative. Why you are adopting such a negative attitude?" And I said, wait for the content. Wait to read the book. Or don't judge the book just because of for the title, because the title is just intended to bring people into the book, and the book is very positive, as you know. So obviously I teach how charts can mislead, but I also make the point that you're making, that visualization is actually a tool that anybody can benefit from. And I'm a strong believer in that. I see visualization as I see writing. I use writing both as a tool for communication, and I use writing also as a tool for thinking. One of the best ways to think clearly is to write clearly. I see visualization the same way. Visualization can be used for exploration, right? Better thinking, and it can also be used for communication. So it's very, very close in that sense to writing. And it's also close to writing in the sense that anybody can learn, and anybody should learn, just because it's so useful.
Yeah, fantastic.
And just like words, it can lie.
They can lie, right? The same way that we can lie with words, with visuals, with photographs, we can also lie with charts. I mean, we human beings have that nasty trait of always trying to co-opt tools that were created with good intentions, and we try to transform them into tools of destruction sometimes.
Right.
Yeah. Do you have more questions, Boris?
Yeah, I've got one last question, actually. I see you've not been drawing, Alberto. I allowed you. We go.
Oh man, it's cool.
I'm always sketching things. I call these my Zoom sketches, because every time that I'm in a Zoom meeting, I always have a pen next to me, and I even created like Zoom backgrounds. Let me see if I can put one in there.
Cool.
There you go. So I'm always drawing like characters, and I also draw objects. So those are, cool. Those are buildings. Let me move around buildings, and that's the city of Palma de Mallorca in Spain in the 7th century, based on archaeological evidence. And that's a dromon. A dromon is a Byzantine galley.
Galley, yeah.
Yeah, a Byzantine galley. Yeah. So I'm always drawing stuff all the time, and these are all characters from the 7th century. Like there's a Berber there. There is also an Arab warrior somewhere. I think that on this side, there you go. There's an Arab warrior, Roman characters. I am one of the things that I'm most fascinating with is the history of the early medieval times, like the 7th century and the 8th century. I have read a lot about that, a lot of history of that time, including books that describe how people, what the clothing at the time, the weaponry, how people lived, and customs and stuff. And I'm always sketching things out. I always sketch out random stuff, not just monsters and things like that. It helps me think. Drawing helps thinking. Drawing aids thinking. I cannot think clearly without a pen in my hand. I need to write things down, draw sketches, draw diagrams, connecting ideas to each other.
Yeah, I think mostly in images.
Yeah, me too. I think in images too, but I also think in words sometimes. It's like a combination of words and visuals, but I am a little bit more visual.
So when I'm talking with people, and also in my classes, and when we have the data visualization colleges, I will just sometimes draw on the whiteboard. I will draw a dashboard in how my son is coming home. I draw a dashboard and in which, and then I make a photo, a snapshot of that whiteboard, and then I will draw it into Paint or Photoshop and make a dashboard. And that's how I work. And then I let people, and that's so cool, because my creativity can be so helpful also for customers, but also for people to learn to work with data, which is fantastic, actually.
I do that all the time. So I'm trying to find here. I have here my notebook. Let me see if I can find an example of how I sketch infographics. This is just, I have tons of notes here. Let me see if I can find it. Give me just 1 second. But yeah, I do this. I mean, every time that I'm shaping data, somehow I usually begin by trying to sketch out how I would like it to look like. So I even sketch scatter plots.
cool.
like that, and dot plots and things
Yes.
like that.
Awesome.
That is absolutely insane because it's much easier to do this in R or in Tableau, right?
Yeah.
But it really helps me think clearly to do it by hand, or when I'm sort of like creating the interface of an application. I also tend to draw by hand all
Yeah,
the
I do that for
right?
websites,
I do that
everything
all the
that
time. But
everything
not
that I do.
everybody does. Not everybody does. There are many, for example, Nadi Bremer, whom I have worked with quite a lot, the famous visualization designer. She sketches things out using code. And
Ah,
same with Moritz Stefaner, also, whom I also work with. And Moritz sketches things out with Tableau or with code, through coding. And I I,
mm.
I, I cannot understand that.
No.
I mean, if I write code, I write code. But if I need to ideate, I need to draw it. I need to see
Draw.
it,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, draw things. I actually would like someone to invent a coding language that is based on drawing, right? That you can draw things and then the computer will translate that into line codes, into lines of code, because coding for me feels unnatural. Drawing feels natural. This is a
Yes.
point that was made. It was made a while ago by Brett Victor. You can look him up, Brett Victor. So Brett Victor has a talk in which he describes a prototype of a tool that works like Adobe Illustrator, the drawing tool, and then you draw shapes, and then the shapes you can map data onto them, and then that is translated into code. There are some tools that are going in that direction. For example, Data Illustrator. There's a tool called Data Illustrator that tries to do that, but we need to move, I think, closer to that goal, creating tools that feel a little bit more natural, right? Rather than simply coding, which feels very abstract for most people, including myself, including people who think visually. We find
Uh,
coding hard because it's so abstract.
yeah. That's for me, coding in Click or Power BI or even Python is very difficult because I think in images
Me too.
and
I mean,
uh,
I have learned a little bit of R myself, so I know how to
mm,
use ggplot and dplyr, and but it still feels unnatural to me
unnatural.
Mm,
Yeah.
to have to write words in order for an image to appear.
mm.
Check.
That doesn't make sense.
No. No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all.
I'm
So
just joking. It does make
no,
sense, but it doesn't make sense to my brain. I mean,
no. I get it totally. So that's what I do. I draw simply pictures. If we do an analysis, I just draw process schemas on whiteboards, make a picture, put it into Visio or whatever, and design something about it. That's how my brain works
yeah.
actually.
Likewise
Uh,
here. Yeah.
yeah. So actually, cool. So shall we wrap it up?
I think it's a good idea.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alberto,
So
thanks
thanks.
very much.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you. Thank you
much.
again for having me. It was a pleasure.
Really, it's so good to have this chat, and I'm really enthusiastic. I'm even thinking, I don't know if your university in Miami does online courses, so maybe to do a course
We
at
we we
the
don't, unfortunately. I do
mm,
some courses sometimes online myself,
yeah.
sometimes through the university, but as a one-time offering, but not. I mean, not formally as part of the offerings of the
Mm.
university, but like
So just keep me
workshops.
posted and
Keep a
maybe
lookout
to
for
do an
that then.
offering.
Yeah.
We will,
Yeah,
yes, definitely. And
great.
I'm waiting full with anticipation on your new book. I have the blue one. I need the yellow one.
Oh, the yellow one is the same. Don't get the yellow one. The only difference between the yellow one and the blue one is that the yellow one has a different color palette. I can actually show it to you. The new color palette is instead of being red and gray, is orange and gray, but it's essentially the same book.
All right.
Okay.
So don't
Okay.
get the yellow. Don't get the soft cover. Wait until
But
2022 when I am supposed to have another book in the market. Crossing my fingers because I still need to write it. But I'm supposed to have another book by January, February of 2022.
yeah.
Right.
So and one big lesson for me, which you taught me in the Harvard session was uh, if you use a line graph, put context inside.
If possible,
Am I?
yes.
Yeah, if possible, please put it inside. And exactly what I did. And every everybody's mind was blown away.
If that doesn't clutter the graphic, that's the key thing. Sometimes if you put
you have to
text
take
inside
care.
a line
Yeah.
graph, you need to be you shouldn't clutter it. But if you have enough space in a line chart to clarify certain points, and this is valid not only for line charts, for bar graphs, for
Bar
scatter
chart.
plots, whatever, any
Yeah.
kind of graphic. If
Yeah.
you can put sort of like that annotation layer in the chart itself to help people make sense of the data, then the graphic will become better, will be better understood.
And you get more value from that as well. Then.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because they understand if they read, oh, I see this. Oh, so that next point
That
maybe
means this,
due
that
to
means
this.
that.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very strong. So that was a very good advice, which I took with me in my lessons. So thank you
Well,
for
thank you. I
teaching
appreciate
me,
that.
and thank you for your time. It's lovely to chat to you, and we are connected anyway through LinkedIn and Twitter. So and I will keep on following you.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much. It was a
Yeah.
pleasure talking to you both.
Was a
Thanks
pleasure.
very much,
Bye,
Alberto.
Alberto.
Stay
Bye
Take
bye.
safe.
care.
Yeah.
Bye
Stay
Stay
bye.
safe.
healthy. Bye
You
bye.
too. You too. Bye bye.